All right, well, welcome everyone. It looks like people are joining us as we're getting started here. Thank you for being a part of our Monday afternoon together. We're fortunate to have Dr. Jennifer Olson, Ellison faculty member, here with us for our session on maintaining vocal health. We are thrilled that Dr. Olson's willing to provide this session for us. Dr. Olson is a performer, scholar, and teacher, and is on the faculty at Bemidji State University, where she teaches voice and opera, and she's going to share her expertise with us today. We are grateful to be able to present these webinars free of charge to anyone who wants to join, and people on Facebook, and this will be archived for later viewing, so a wide resource. Really thanks to hundreds of donors who support the LSM program. And today in particular, we're thankful for Scott and Jane Sodergren for their sponsorship of this specific program. And I think with that, I am going to turn this over to Dr. Olson, and she will take it from here. So again, welcome everyone, and thank you, Dr. Olson.
Thank you, Tom. It's quite an honor to be here. So thanks for joining me. I want to encourage everyone, if you have questions throughout this program today, please put them in the chat box. If you're watching this from Facebook, you can put it in the comments below the video. But please ask your questions, and we will address those at the end of the program. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all today. So this is quite timely to talk about because I don't know about you all, but up here in Bemidji, it is snowing. And so we've had the first sort of bout of folks getting sick. So this hopefully will give you all some methods for coping with some of the things that are coming up seasonally as we go here. Okay, so the basics. How do we maintain our vocal health every day in our everyday lives? I know that if you are a student, you're singing a lot probably in choir, probably in church, you're probably singing, doing your own solo work as well. That on top of all the speaking that you're doing during the day can be taxing. If you're a professional in the field, if you're a teacher, you are talking all the time and singing on top of that with your students. So it's really important to do a few things to maintain your health while you have it, your vocal health while you have it. First of all, you got to get those Z's. So really making your sleep sacred is very important to your singing life, especially if you have a busy schedule and you're trying to maintain your vocal fitness. Diet. And we will talk about these a little bit later in more detail, but knowing what kinds of foods trigger certain responses as a singer is really important. So spending that time to know yourself is worth every minute. So vocal rest. How do we use vocal rest effectively? For students, when you are feeling kind of like you're coming down with something or you're hoarse and you ask your teacher, your choir teacher, like, what should I do? They'll often say, you really should go on vocal rest. And so understanding when to use that tool is really important and when not to use that tool. If you're a teacher, knowing how to use vocal rest effectively is also really important. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that coming up. Hydrating. Duh, right? Yeah, we're supposed to drink water. Well, there's more nuance to it than that when you're a singer. Yes, it's important to stay hydrated, but there are some details that we're going to talk about that can help you with your hydration and your singing a little bit later on. Gargling. I know, right? I didn't think this was important, but as it turns out, it has become a very, very useful tool with vocal fatigue. And again, we'll talk more in detail about this later on in the seminar, but gargling is also a really important tool that you can use to maintain your daily vocal health. Exercise. In order to have a healthy voice, you have to have a strong core. You have to have good coordination, and you have to be able to be stretchy and flexible. And that's going to just come from paying attention to the needs of your body. You don't need to be a marathon runner, although kudos to you if you are. But you do need regular gentle exercise to help maintain your vocal health. I mean, it can just help move phlegm away from the cords even. So that's an important tool that you can use. So here we're going to get into more detail now about these categories. If you're finding that at the end of the day, you're really tired and you're speaking a lot and you're finding that you're really getting tired, it may not be the singing that may be the problem. It may, in fact, be the speaking that could be the problem. So we'll talk about how to find your healthy speaking voice. What's also really important is healthy fine edge function. Well, for students out there who might be wondering what that means, your vocal cords where they touch is a very kind of a razor thin edge. And when that edge is compromised by dryness, it could be something like laryngitis, but it could also be swelling, then you will find stamina is a big issue. So how to maintain that fine edge function is another really important tool in your toolbox. And again, we will talk more in detail about that. Semi-occluded exercises. Those are also, we're going to cover just a few of those and what exercises like that can do for you. It simply means exercises that are partially closed. Again, we'll discover more about that coming up here. Establishing a warm-up routine. For students, it's incredibly important that you have a warm-up routine. And for those of you who are professionals out there, I'm sure you already have one, but having a ritualized warm-up routine is really important. And we'll kind of walk through that as well. A warm down routine. Unfortunately, I did not discover the importance of a warming down routine until I actually had, acute issues that I had to deal with. And now I maintain my healthy singing voice in this crazy, busy life with the use of this. This is crucially important, is a warm down routine. So we'll talk about that coming up as well. This is our overview. So, finding your speaking voice, very important. I'm going to show you an exercise that you can use to establish your healthy speaking voice. This is called the QX exercise. I learned this exercise from David Jones, and essentially there's a place pitch-wise where your voice wants to sit, where it's comfortable. If you have a tendency to speak too high, higher than your comfort zone that's natural to you, you will cause yourself fatigue. If you have a tendency to speak in pitch below that comfy spot, then you can also create fatigue. And all of us tend to have certain little tics in our speaking voices. Some of us have this tendency to do some glottal fry, and doing that over the course of a day can be exhausting as well. So establishing where your voice wants to sit is important. So this exercise, you're going to want to be near a keyboard to do this. And I'm just trying to find, here we go. So I'll get my electronic keyboard out here so that I can show you exactly how to do this. So every day it may sit a little bit differently, so it's good to check in every day. Here's how you do it. You're going to whisper the words QX over and over again, and you're going to crescendo from a whisper into your full speaking voice. So I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to show you what it's like. QX, 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 Q. That's about where it wants to sit. So today, my speaking voice likes to sit around a B natural below middle C. So knowing that, then when I start my teaching day, I find out where my voice wants to sit. It's usually around a B for me. And then I consciously make sure that my voice sits a little around that B. If I get really excited, and this is something that I have a tendency to do, I tend to get excited and then I flip up into my mix and I speak like this all day and I get really excited. And then I get home and I'm like vocally really tired. So it takes a conscious effort. Find where your speaking voice wants to sit, and then as you speak around that pitch. You're also going to want to make sure that your speaking voice is properly supported. If your core isn't gently engaged as you speak, then you'll find that you're not actually bringing your chords all the way together. And when that happens, you're essentially bringing in the whispering function, and there is nothing more fatiguing to the voice than a whisper function. So engage your core, find your happy place. For me today, it's around a B natural. And if you can speak around there all day long, you'll find, oh, I have a lot more vocal stamina. Fine edge function. Again, so for those of you who may not know what I'm talking about here, that's that razor's edge that touches where your chords meet. And we'll have a look here in a second at some chords so you know what I'm talking about. Fine edge function, it means that your chords are healthy and thin so that they can meet cleanly. And the way that we maintain that is vocal efficiency, meaning that you are working just enough to make everything function, but no more than it takes to make the voice happen the way it needs to. So that means you have to consider your chord closure, meaning, are you being efficient? Are your chords coming all the way together? If you're hearing this in your voice, your chords are not coming all the way together. Okay? And over time, again, that's that whisper function. Whispering means your chords don't ever actually seal as you speak. So finding good chord closure is very important. You can find that through the whimper function. That feeling of kind of a little weepy, a little bit crying, that will get those chords to fully close. We can't talk about efficiency without talking about air pressure. And what I have here is those like wacky, waving, inflatable, arm flailing tube men that you find out in front of car dealerships and stuff. You see them kind of like floating. Finding just enough air pressure and balancing it with enough supraglottal pressure or enough back pressure to keep your chords nice and stable is really important. So another thing that's going to make you tired at the end of the day is if you're using too much air pressure. So when you're getting frustrated with those unruly kids and you're doing this, you're using way too much air pressure. You're bringing that chest voice up higher than it naturally wants to go. And the combination of that air pressure and that chest voice function shoved up there is going to tire you out. If your air pressure, like I said before, is not enough, then you'll get more of a whisper function, and that is also very tiring. So finding that point of efficiency, chord closure with the right air pressure, and thinking about that throughout the day is going to help you maintain your vocal health. And certainly those should be goals when you're singing as well, when you're working on your singing voice as well, as those of you teachers know very well. I have here a link to the Joseph Stempel technique, and that is a therapy exercise that works on chord closure. If you are interested in that link, please write that in the comments, and I'd be happy to send this slide so that you can go to that link. But it works on that fine edge function. So here are a pair of healthy chords. As you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but as you can see, the edges are very straight, very clean. There's a little bit of variation, but that's normal because, you know, everybody is built a little bit differently and people are not symmetrical. So you're going to have some variation. As you can see, the right chord is a little thicker than the left. But if you look at the edges, it's very straight and very, very clean, fine edges, meaning that there's no swelling there, and they can meet without any resistance at all, and they can vibrate. properly. Over here on the right hand side, here is an example of a bowed cord. This can happen if you're using too much air pressure on a consistent basis. So as you can see, the right cord here has this little hump here. Do you see that? So that right there is going to affect the cords coming together cleanly. And so making sure that you're doing exercises that are going to address that fine edge function is going to keep those edges nice and straight and healthy. The Stemple technique is one thing you can do, but simple exercises like practicing singing really clear sound lightly and with a lot of support is testing out that fine edge function. If you find that you're tired at the end of the day and you're worried, oh my gosh, do I have swelling? If you find that you try that and you're hearing hoarseness and you're not squeezing, then that would indicate that there's some swelling on those fine edges. You don't need to worry, you can take care of that, but it's good to check in and to know where you're at. So we're going to talk about semi-occluded exercises or semi-occluded vocal tract exercises is what SOVT stands for. You'll see a lot of teachers use this, the straw technique, singing into a straw. What we need to know about that is, what are semi-occluded exercises? Certainly working in a straw is one, but we have much simpler ones we can use. Anybody who knows how to do a lip buzz, or a tongue trill, you can use or ng. All of those are what we call semi-occluded exercises, meaning that there is resistance, supraglottal, meaning resistance back pressure that you're creating to balance the subglottal, or the pressure that you create with your breath. When you find the sweet spot, when you're balanced with your air pressure from the top and from the bottom, then your cords are happy and healthy, and you can have long days of much use and be healthy. These exercises create resistance so that you don't have to. It creates a little bit of back pressure and vibration, and that really helps. So why are they helpful? Because they help you find, they help you find equilibrium or equal balance between your air pressure coming out and the resistance to that air pressure, which is support. Okay, so finding support as a singer and creating support within our bodies is like a lifetime work. And so these semi-occluded exercises give you the sense of a supported sound without you having to coordinate as in a detailed way within your body. So they're a nice sort of a intermediate exercise. So coming up with a ritualized warm-up routine is really important, and this is something that gets neglected. I like to say warm-ups and etudes are the main course. Your repertoire, what your solo music, the stuff that you're going to be performing, that's the dessert. Okay, so really ritualizing your warm-up routine can really help your focus and also help you find that beautiful, healthy balance in air pressure and cord closure. So how can you establish a routine? For those of you who can, finding a ritualized time of day to practice. Those of you who might be teaching all day long, make sure you're warming up before your first class walks in the door. Make sure it can be a 5 minute, it can be 5 to 10 minutes, but if you have a ritualized warm-up routine that you can do at the same time every day, that can dramatically help increase your stamina and relieve some of the pressures on your voice from your busy day. Think about the order of exercises. We are, even those of us who are maybe don't naturally take to routines, we all respond really well to a routine because it brings a certain focus to what we do, and we know what to expect. It's safe because we know what to expect. So think about the order of your exercises. Absolutely, the voice changes and feels different every day. But if you have a series of exercises that you know that you do always, that you start with, and you're sort of in the same order, then once you've completed those after that, you can do anything that feels good, and experiment a little bit. But that ritualization can really help with your stamina and your vocal health. So I have here listed in bullet points here the kinds of things that you want to be addressing in your warm-ups, right? So it's good to, this is a suggestion. By no means is this, the letter of the law, but it's good to start your routine with a semi-occluded exercise so you can find that equilibrium of air pressure. So starting with tongue trills or lip buzzes or V's, things like that, are a really good thing to start with, just to check in with your breath that day. Fine edge functions exercises. So as I said before, like the anything that asks you to go to those edges and sing on the edges of the chords is a really good thing to check in with your voice. How am I doing? Do I have swelling? Are they coming together cleanly? If you're hearing any hoarseness or any kind of cloudiness in your sound, that may be the very early stages of a little bit of swelling on the cords. And I'll show you later on some things we can do if indeed that is what you're feeling. Balanced vowel formation, right? So making sure, and everybody's a little bit different, but finding, talk to your teacher, find those lovely vowels that do create the proper air pressure and resistance to that air pressure. If, for instance, if you spread a lot with the corners, the chords tend to imitate that and pull apart, so you'll get a little bit of airiness in your sound, and then you have to use too much air pressure to bring those chords fully together. So finding good vowels, making sure your E's aren't spread like this, but E more internal. Finding exercises that do that, like can be a really helpful thing to include in your warm-up routine. Focusing on legato. Find an exercise that really gets you to think about legato. True legato is the result of an open throat and really equalized air pressure and good support. So think you can work in reverse. You can find those things by thinking about your legato as you do a specific exercise. Agility exercises are great too for everyone because they encourage you to drop any unneeded weight you may be carrying, which essentially is when you thicken the chords too much. So any extra thickening agility exercises are going to encourage you to just thicken as much as you need to. Again, efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Onset exercises, things that get you to practice bringing the chords together. Those kinds of exercises, practicing getting those chords together. That is wonderful in a warm-up routine because it gets you to practice that fine edge function and that coordination. Just enough pressure to get the chords all the way together, but not so much that you're squeezing. So that's kind of how you can build a routine, and certainly ask your teacher to help you if that's an issue. The warm down routine, this is so important, and I wish I had known about this sooner in my singing life, but luckily I know about it now. So this is a well-known therapy exercise, is using the feedback from water to create that supraglottal pressure or to equalize the pressure. So I carry this with me everywhere I go, and it's I can use it for warm ups as well, but it's particularly helpful with warm downs. So those of you who get to the end of your day and you're feeling vocally fatigued, meaning that there's a fuzziness in the sound, you may have some dryness or even pain. Some people can feel, muscular pain and stuff from the way that they're speaking throughout the day. This is a wonderful exercise to do at the end of your day. I do it intermittently. If I know I have a very heavy teaching day and I have a rehearsal and I have some kind of performance, I will use this throughout the day as well. Essentially, what I have a special bottle here, as you can see, I've drawn a line here to show me where I need to fill the water to. Because if you fill it too high and you do this, you're gonna splash all over yourself. But you want it to be enough that the straw is 2 to 2.5 inches into the water. I like the bendy straws because that way I can bring the bottle without having to lean down like this. You're going to put it in your mouth, and then you're going to do what every kid loves to do, and you're going to make bubbles. The difference between a warm up routine and a warm down routine is that the warm down is going to stay in the lower part of your range. So you'll only go into your chest voice and maybe a little bit into the low mix, but you're not going to go up above that when you're warming down, because what you're trying to do is get the throat to its happy place where you speak, right? So noodle around in your chest voice, and you'll find that this is incredibly soothing. I have used this for when I'm coming out of laryngitis, and what it does is it very, very gently moves any phlegm away from the cords, which can irritate them. And it also is it's almost like a vocal massage. So it will take down any swelling, reactionary swelling that you may have from your long, busy day. So I like to do just do, mi, do. The main thing to know about this exercise, and I do this for a good 15 minutes. If it's been a really tough day, I'll do this for 15 minutes. I feel like $1,000,000 afterwards. What's important to know is if you do this into the back of your throat, that's actually not going to help you. It might actually make you more tired. So it's really important that you feel the sound right in the straw. Kind of have to be like a little bit obnoxious, and if you're struggling with that, you can practice it with like an American R, and that will help you get right into the straw. So this is an incredibly helpful tool. So students, say you have a really long choir rehearsal and you're like really tired. Warm down, noodle around in your chest voice. You don't even have to do specific pitches. If you noodle around in there for a good 10 to 15 minutes, you're gonna take down any kind of swelling that may happen as a reaction to overuse. And for teachers, I do this before I go in. I do this on my lunch break, and I do it when I come home from work, when I'm done for the day. For performers, this is incredibly helpful to warm down after a long rehearsal or a long performance or what have you, especially if you have to sing again the next day and be on top of your game. Then this is a really great way to take down any fatigue so that you're ready to go the next day. For those of you who aren't singers, if you find you wake up in the morning and you kind of have a frog voice and you're kind of phlegmy, this is a fantastic way to get your voice up and running very quickly for the day. So it's a very, very useful therapy technique. So now we're going to talk about some common, chronic, and acute vocal issues that a lot of us face in our singing lives. So very common, we often, performance anxiety, when we know we have something up. I mean, I was nervous to do this talk today, and as a reaction, my voice did some funky things in preparation, being nervous. So there are some things that we can do to address some of those things. I know we'll go into detail in a moment about that. Overuse, right? So that's a very common acute vocal issue. And we've talked a little bit about that already. Dryness, believe it or not, especially this time of year, I have a lot of students coming in and saying, I'm not sick, but it just feels fuzzy because I just feel so dry all the time. And we'll talk about how to address that, especially in northern Minnesota. And for those of you who are in high altitude locations, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, any kind of dry place or cold or high altitude place are things you're going to want to be aware of. And those of you who may be living in warm, wet climates, when you walk into an air-conditioned building and pretty soon your voice feels not good because it's so dry. Again, I'm going to show you some methods to combat that a little bit. Allergies, that's a big problem that a lot of folks face. And we'll talk about just some ways to work with that. I think with all of these things, you kind of have to get to know yourself, know thyself. That's the most important thing. Reflux. That's a very common problem that causes some pretty serious vocal issues. So we'll talk about some ways that you can help mitigate that. I am not a medical doctor, so a lot of things I'm going to suggest are more practice-based, more experiential, and feel free to use them or not. They're harmless, so actually they're very helpful. Traveling. Believe it or not, traveling can be a huge chronic or acute vocal issue. And we'll talk about some ways to handle your voice when you're traveling so that you can make sure you're in tip-top shape. So we're talking about, I should have titled this slide a little bit differently, but what I'm addressing here is performance anxiety. So sometimes we have very physical reactions, pretty amazing physical reactions to when we get nervous to perform. We have some muscular stuff, sometimes, lack of breath, shaky, you get cold, muscle tension, but also sometimes the climate or environment of your throat can change just based on your nerves. So I have found in my experience that there tends to be two sudden kinds of shifts in vocal environment or climate when we get nervous. People tend to fall into one of two camps, or sometimes you can experience both, at different times. So knowing how to mitigate this is going to be helpful. Some of us, when we get nervous, get a phlegmy throat. So all of a sudden it's like, you feel kind of goopy and sticky, and you feel like you almost like there's constantly some kind of gunk on your cords. And for those like me, I tend to be this, and that's sandpaper tongue. Things just instantly go dry. My tongue goes dry, my throat goes dry. I constantly have to lick my lips because my lips go dry. So people tend to have, in terms of the vocal climate, one of those reactions when they get nervous. So solutions, let's talk solutions to this kind of thing. I've been working on this presentation for many years, and I've gathered a lot of these tools and toolbox from my own experiences, and also from a lot of my singer friends, my teacher friends, that come up with really creative solutions, and I've sort of compiled them here. Knowing when and what to eat before you sing, or before you have to speak, or before something important is really important. And know thyself. You have to get to know yourself. I know for me, I can't eat within 2 hours before I have a big performance or something that I'm nervous, I can't eat. It creates too much of a reaction in my throat. So I have to eat, at least 2 hours before the performance. That's just me though. For some people, it's different. And knowing what to eat is really important. So if you look here on the left at our phlegmy folks over here, um, you're going to want to avoid things that are going to create more phlegm, right, in your diet when before you sing. And for those of you who demand a lot from your voice, you may have to cut these things out more than just occasionally. So, things that produce phlegm, like dairy tends to be a phlegm producer. So if you tend to get a little phlegmy when you're nervous, you're going to want to, at least before the performance or the day of, you're going to want to avoid some of those dairy products, sugars. Sugar causes a lot of phlegm as well. So you're going to want to avoid those things. And then you're going to want to replace them with things that are not going to create issues. So for some people, eating like chicken and rice the day of a performance can be very helpful to help mitigate some of the phlegmy reaction that we get when we get nervous. Citrus can be really good for phlegmy folks because it can cut through it and kind of thin it out. So that can be really helpful as well. But the main thing is to experiment and find what works for you. Everybody is very individual, very different. Knowing when and how to hydrate. This is really important. When we get nervous about a performance, we tend to hydrate a lot, right? Which is, you think, oh, well, that's good, right? That's good to hydrate a lot. Well, if you hydrate and drink a ton of water, gulp down water right before you're going out on stage, you're actually doing more harm than good because you're washing away all of that helpful saliva in your mouth and the coating that you have in your throat. So making sure that as you're hydrating earlier in the day, that you're not overhydrating, yeah, because if you overhydrate, you can dry everything out, and it's also not good for you to dilute yourself too much. And the other thing too is if you're a phlegmy person, drinking hot liquids or pretty warm liquids are going to be really helpful because they're going to thin out the mucus or the phlegm that you may have and move it much easier. But if you're a dry mouth person and you're drinking hot or warm liquids, that can actually dry you out further. So drinking liquids that are, either room temperature or colder for a dry mouth person is going to be much more important. So, knowing, okay, this is phlegm that's making me feel this way, or, oh my goodness, I'm so dry, is going to dictate how you hydrate yourself. I forgot to mention over here, us dry mouth folks, in terms of diet, when what we need to eat before we sing in order to mitigate some of that dryness. Anything that's got those good omega-3 fatty acids are going to be good to create a coating in your mouth. So such as avocados, salmon, things like that. I have found a very cool trick with apples. If you're a phlegmy person, and you're backstage before you go on, and you find that your phlegm is kind of getting in your way, if you take apple slices with you, for phlegmy folks, a tart green apple is really good because the tartness cuts through the phlegm, and the pulpiness of the apple can actually gently kind of scrape away any of the coating that your body is creating in reaction to your nerves. For those of you who are dry mouth, something that's a little bit sweeter, like a red apple or gala apple or what have you, something sweeter is going to be really good for you backstage because it will cause you to salivate, and that can help lubricate any dryness that you're experiencing. Gargling. Gargling is really important For those of you with phlegmy throat, when you get nervous, if you're gargling with, I mean, salt water is good for anyone. So a good salinated water is going to be excellent to gargle with, whether you're dry mouth or phlegmy. But if you're someone who tends to get phlegmy and you really want to cut through some of that, you can dilute some apple cider vinegar and gargle with that, and that's a really great way to cut through some of the phlegm. For those of you who may be dry mouth, gargling with like turmeric, so take like a good tablespoon of turmeric powder, mix it in with some warmish water so it can dilute properly. It's really gross, but it creates a really good coating that you can gargle with and help with some of the dryness as well. Sinus irrigation. For those of you with phlegm, irrigating those sinuses is going to be important so that because when you sleep, that phlegm tends to kind of run down and then sit on your cords. And that phlegm is irritating to the cords, and that's what will cause swelling and irritation. So irrigating those sinuses is going to be important. Timing of that is important too, because if you're a phlegmy person, you don't want to irrigate your sinuses right before you go to bed, because then they're going to run and then they're going to sit on those cords. So doing it a little bit earlier in the day. If you're a dry mouth person, or even when we're dealing with dryness, sinus irrigation is really, really helpful because it's salinated, right? It's a salt water, and that can help hydrate and coat the sinuses so that they don't get so dried out. And for someone who's a dry mouth person, this kind of sinus irrigation before you go to bed is usually better, actually. So, and this is just feedback, experience, all of that good stuff. Steaming. Steaming is an incredible tool that is a wonderful solution for both phlegm and dry mouth. However, we have to make a distinction. If you're someone who tends to get phlegmy, it's going to be important that you hot steam, meaning you can get a kettle, boil some water, pour it in a bowl, and then put a towel over your head in the bowl and steam that way. And the heat helps to thin out any kind of mucus or phlegmy stuff that's kind of preventing you from doing what you need to do. If you're a dry mouth person, you're not going to want to hot steam right before you sing or the day of, because it will dry you out further. So it's good to cold steam and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but you can get a nebulizer or some kind of cool-ish steam to help hydrate you without drying you out. And then the straw in the water. This straw in water therapy exercise is incredibly helpful to gently move phlegm. You don't want to cough. You don't want to clear your throat. Those are going to hurt your cords because you're essentially slapping them together. And if they're already irritated from the phlegm, those babies, be nice to them, right? So this is a really great way to create some vibration that just gently moves phlegm off the cords. If you're a dry person, it has a tendency, that vibration to create more saliva, which helps lubricate the mouth as well. So now we're talking about overuse, which we have touched on already in our daily maintenance of our vocal health. But finding your speaking voice, do your QX exercise, practice that, do it every day. And you'll get the longer you do it over time, the more you're going to get an idea of where your voice really wants to sit. When you're sick or when there's any swelling, it's going to want to sit lower than it usually does. So knowing where your voice sits when you're healthy is really important as a point of reference to figure out what's going on when it's not healthy. So find that speaking voice. Micro rests. So students, those of you who are practicing a lot, do your warm-up and then take a micro rest, meaning silently for 5 minutes or 4 minutes. Doesn't take much. Look through your etudes. Go through it in your head. Look at some repertoire. Just look at some intervals, look through it, maybe mouth some of the words, and then go on with your practice session. Once you've completed your etudes, then stop again, take another little micro rest, right? So micro rests in your practice sessions are incredibly helpful. For those of you who are professionals who are speaking all day long, you teachers, I'm telling you, you public school teachers, hats off, salutes to you. You guys are superheroes. Take those micro rests. So whether it's 5 minutes on your lunch break where you could just go into a quiet room and just be silent, and taking those multiple times a day, 5 minutes, can really help with your stamina and fatigue, vocal fatigue. Warming down. Warm down when you've overused your voice. Warm down into the water, or you can warm down using semi-occluded exercises if you don't have that. So those kinds of semi-occluded exercises create a similar kind of vibration and feedback. And so doing that in your chest voice and low mix, and doing that down there, men doing that in the lower part, not super, super low, where you kind of around your speaking area. Warming down is going to be really important when you've overused your voice. Steaming. Know when to hot steam, know when to cold steam. If you're at the end of the day and you're vocally really tired, often if you're having some fatigue and some irritation on the cords from overuse, your body will produce phlegm. In that case, you're going to want a hot steam. If you're just feeling really tight from the long day, then the warm steam can also help with that. But if you're feeling dry, really dry after this long day and tired, then you're going to want to find a way to steam that is cool steam. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail coming up here. And then there's extended vocal rest, right? So if you overuse your voice enough times repeatedly, you need to know when to go silent. Okay, and sometimes just 24 hours can do the trick. So let's talk about extended vocal rest. It's something that I didn't really understand for a long time, and now being able to understand it has really made me capable of using it much more effectively. So extended vocal rest is only going to help you if you have temporary reactionary swelling. So if I go to a concert and scream, woo at the band, which as a singer I would never do that, but those of you students, don't do that. But if it does happen, you might have a swelling reaction. Well, you know exactly the cause of that reaction. You know that it's because you screamed at that concert last night, right? So it's a temporary reaction. It happened in reaction to something. You have this swelling, and so you go on extended vocal rest, meaning that for maybe 24 to 48 hours, you don't speak. Carry around a clipboard, whiteboard, write out what you want to say. Now that we have to wear masks all the time, wear a mask that says I'm on vocal rest and don't say anything. Be quiet, okay? If you're using your voice incorrectly over a long period of time and the swelling now is not a reactionary swelling but is a consistent swelling, then extended vocal rest is not going to help you, because once you start speaking again and singing again, if you're doing it in the same way that caused that long-term swelling to begin with, you're just going to start the process over again. So if you find that you're hoarse on a regular basis, you need to go to your doctor, go to a speech pathologist, and learn how to change what it is that you're doing. If you're with a voice teacher, talk to your voice teacher and address some vocal exercises. Have them address what's going on vocally that's causing a chronic reaction and a chronic swelling. So don't use extended vocal rest in that case. It will not help you. Laryngitis. Laryngitis is a very good example for using extended vocal rest. So as long as you're experiencing that hoarseness, where like truly you can't even really phonate, then you're going to want to use your extended vocal rest. And then once you start feeling like you can phonate again, even if it's not for very long, then you start doing the water technique, and that will help take down the rest of the swelling. Dryness and allergies. This is a tough one. We all have a tendency in those summer, spring, fall months to have those allergic reactions. You want to hydrate. That's important, but don't overhydrate. If you have allergies and you're overhydrating, you can actually exacerbate the issue by causing more dryness. So knowing when to hydrate is really important as well. If your allergic reaction is to get really dry, hydrating before you go to sleep, yeah, you might have to get up a few times in the night, but hydrating before you go to sleep is a really good idea because we tend to dry out, over the night. If you're someone who has a phlegmy reaction to allergies, don't hydrate. I would say try not to hydrate too much right before you go to bed. Because that sometimes can cause more phlegm you move out the phlegm, more comes, right? So knowing when to hydrate with allergies is really important. Find the medication that works for you. Test them out. Try those allergy meds. Figure out what works for you. Personally, because I have all of these techniques and things I've built over years and years, I don't like to sing on allergy medication. I would rather deal with the phlegm or the dryness than sing on the medication because I feel that it changes things too much for me. But everybody's different. You may try out those over-the-counter stuff, talk to your doctor, and find a medication that works for you. And keep in mind that you may have to play to figure out how it affects your singing. Oh, this is a really cool little trick I learned from my sister who has terrible allergies. She said to me, because she gets really watery eyes, she said that when she wears mascara, it tends to trap the pollen in the mascara and keep it away from her eyes. And so it helps with the kind of runny, nasty stuff. So I thought that was a really cool little tip. So nasal irrigation. We talked a little bit about that. You're going to want to use a salinated nasal irrigation. What I have here is just an example. I'm not promoting these products. You have to find what works for you. But this is what I have been using and have found to be really helpful. I use the squeeze bottle because I like the fact that I can control what I'm doing better than the neti pot just using the gravity. So this, you put it up on one nostril, fill it with the saline water. These will come with saline packs. Whoops. I'm trying to show you what that looks like. They'll come with, most of you probably already do this, but just for those of you who may not know, they comes with these saline packs, and you fill it with water. And generally you want to do it either with water that is distilled, something that doesn't have any kind of deposits, mineral deposits and stuff. You don't want to use water straight out of the sink. That can be really dangerous. So make sure you boil. If you're not going to use distilled water, then boil the water first to make sure that it's safe to use. And then put the saline in it, and you can irrigate. You send the water up the nose through the sinuses and out the other side, and then you do the other side as well. I was really surprised to discover that nasal irrigation is especially helpful for dryness. So if you're, especially those of you who may be in high altitude regions, and you're finding that your singing voice or speaking voice is dramatically affected by the dryness, irrigating your nasal, your sinuses regularly can really help keep them hydrated, and have, mitigate some of those symptoms. Steaming. So we talked about hot steam. And one of the things you can do to kind of level up your hot steaming is you can put like a drop of maybe eucalyptus oil or peppermint oil or tea tree oil, just a very little bit in your steaming bowl, and that can really help cut through especially for phlegmy stuff, so for colds and stuff like that. But you want to hot steam for a good 10 to 15 minutes, and will help move things along. When I don't have essential oils to put in my hot steam, then if I have any like peppermint or mint tea on hand, I'll just put a tea bag in there, and that really helps to open the sinuses and soothe anything that's going on. For those of you who experience dryness, then you're going to want to use cooler steam. This is, a $40 handheld nebulizer. You can get it online on Amazon. Again, I'm not promoting any specific product, but these are examples that I'm showing up here. Again, if you want those links, please go ahead and let us know, and I'll make sure to send it. So this is a nebulizer. You have to also buy these saline packets. Now this is normally for asthmatics, for people who have asthma, and what they'll do is they'll put this is just saline, just water, and they'll put it in here, and then they'll put their medication in that, and then it steams. For singers who aren't asthmatics, you can just use the saline, and it's a nice cool steam. So it works really, really well, and it's portable, and you just charge it, just charge the battery. So that's really, really, really helpful. Reflux. This is a problem for a lot of folks. And hey, if you don't have a regular issue with reflux, hot dog, awesome for you. But I guarantee you there will be meals in your life that are a little bit irritating that you're going to have to figure out how to help that reflux in reaction to that when you're singing. If you have knowing what to eat is important. But if accidentally you eat something that causes some kind of reflux, then there are some ways that you can handle that. So if reflux is a regular thing for you, you're going to have to really examine your diet. Keep a food diary if you need to. Examine when to eat as well as what to eat. So making sure if you have irregular reflux, you should not be eating at least 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed, so that you have time to digest it, so that when you lay down, that acid isn't going to travel in the same way, or that your stomach won't be so full, so that it would be less likely that the acid would come up. So knowing when to eat is really important, and knowing what to eat, knowing what foods are going to cause reflux. So anything that's really acidic, tomatoes, tomato sauces, coffee can be very acidic, or I don't know if it's necessarily acidic, but it definitely can cause a reflux reaction because it's of that. So those are examples of things that can cause reflux. And knowing how and when to drink with what you're eating is important as well. If reflux is a serious issue for you as a singer, then you need to make sure that you're not drinking with your meals. Drink 30 minutes beforehand, so that your body has time to process that liquid before you're putting food into your stomach. Liquefying it with more liquid will make it more easily come up. So knowing when to drink with what you eat is important as well. Antacids. A lot of inexperienced, I was certainly one of them, singers thought, oh, well, I'll just get those Tums, and if I'm feeling like I'm having reflux, I'll just eat some of those, even the extra strength ones. The problem with those is that they might calm a reaction, but they don't create a coating. And also, if you drink too much water and take like a bunch of Tums, you can actually cause yourself to get the dyes. So you have to be really careful with that. So I recommend, and this is, again, talk to your doctor. But like a liquid antacid, something that will coat the throat, coat the cords, coat the esophagus and down into the stomach, will help create a barrier as well, and calm any irritation. So having that coating is really helpful. A reflux pillow for some folks is really helpful as well. Those are the wedge pillows. You can get them at Walmart. those or on Amazon, whatever. Propping yourself up just a little bit when you sleep can also help with that reflux as well. Talk to your doctor. Find better ways to manage your reflux if it's an issue. And for those of you who maybe just experience an acute reaction to a meal, and you're a singer, have that liquid antacid on hand so that you can right away address those symptoms. And obviously with reflux as well, there are medications you can take, but that you need to talk to your doctor about that. Traveling, very strange, but it can have it can cause a real problem for singers. When we travel, especially on, well, gosh, it's just anytime we travel when we're moving, like a longer distance, dryness is an issue. It's with this pandemic, when we all had to start wearing masks, it didn't feel so foreign to me because I've been using a VOG mask and again, I'm not saying this is the product for you. I'm not selling a product, but any mask will do essentially. I like this particular mask, but having a mask when you're getting on a plane, and you're traveling for a long period of time helps keep the moisture intact inside. And honestly, if I'm traveling in the car further than 30 minutes away or even 20 minutes away, I'll wear a mask, just so that I can keep the moisture and the environment stable. And I have a picture here of a train, but the same thing there. When we have those air circulation systems, it can cause a lot of dryness, and we're dealing with air conditioning and stuff like that as well. So, and again, steaming is really great. These handheld nebulizers are amazing. When I have long travel at on my journey, if I stop at some place, I'll go in the bathroom and use my nebulizer just to steam, return some of that moisture to my vocal environment. So, that is, I think, as much as we have time to cover today. Here are some resources that can give you a lot more information. Again, I'm happy to share this information with anyone who so desires it. But now I'd like to open the floor up to some questions that people have had throughout the course of this webinar today. And if Tom wouldn't mind reading out any questions, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Good to jump back in here. And just so everyone knows, I will follow up to this webinar with an email, and we'll include a recording of this so people can go back and catch anything you may have missed, because this is just packed with such applicable information. And maybe we can include some of these links as well in the email so that everybody can have a chance to see some of these and don't have to scramble to write things down. So we'll just take maybe just a couple of minutes to answer any questions. Again, feel free to type them into the chat section, or again on the comments on Facebook. But we did have one question come up already on Facebook asking me if you could talk a little bit about projection.
Projection, absolutely. Well, projection essentially comes down to playing your resonance and giving the support to that. And so to create really good projection, there are several things that have to come into play. Just take a moment to imagine yourself walking into the boomiest, echoiest cathedral church you've ever been in. What's special about that space that creates resonance? Usually, you'll find that the echoey places have very tall ceilings, so we're talking big, big space, and they also have hard surfaces, so you can hear the echo of your footsteps, right? They're not going to be carpeted and cushioned in general. So we have to imitate that when we sing acoustically. We need enough tall space, and we also need structured space, surface that is that can create hard surfaces. So we have a couple of things that we can play with in that sense. So projection is going to come from proper vowel formation that creates tall space and bounces the sound off of hard surfaces. Your soft palate can go up. There's boom, there's a tall space right there. The standing, your posture can also create a space that is conducive to good projection. You have all these surfaces inside that can create the hard surface off of which to bounce sound. So the back of the teeth, the hard palate, and all this bone in our head and stuff, and in our chest here. These are all vibrating spaces because they're open, and some more open than others, and we have bone on which to bounce sound off of. So we need tall vowels that bounce off of the hard surfaces. We need good support, meaning that you're equalizing your air pressure. If you use too much air pressure this way, your cords aren't going to be able to be stable. You have to create back pressure for them. So subglottal and supraglottal pressure. That kind of balance between the two is support, and you create that with your core, and other muscles in your body, and in order, and also to project then, we also need efficient sound production, meaning that your chords have to come together fully and completely all the time. And anytime you get any kind of inefficient sound, your projection is going to lose out. So, vowel formation that is tall, bouncing sound off of those hard surfaces. You don't want to swallow your sound. Supporting your sound, meaning that your core is engaged, that your muscles are engaged, and efficient phonation. Those are the kinds of things that can create good projection.
Thank you. So we had another question pop up here about using eucalyptus and mint related inhaling or teas, and wondering, somebody who was told along the way that those things actually feel good but could be damaging, and wondering what your thoughts or stance were around eucalyptus or mint related.
Absolutely. It depends on what the cause of your problem is. If you have like real irritation, meaning that the cords or the throat is very red and angry, those kinds of things can actually irritate that more. If, however, you are phlegmy and you have a cold and you're just like plumb full of mucus, those kinds of things can actually cut through that. So you have to distinguish what you're experiencing. But that's a really good point. Those things can be irritating, and also with reflux. If you're drinking a lot of mint or peppermint tea, that can actually worsen your reflux. So, good point. There is definitely nuance to that. You have to understand what's happening and in order to treat it properly.
Well, thank you for that. And I think if people don't have any more questions, we can wrap up. Again, I'll follow up with an email probably tomorrow with the recording of today's session, as well as some of these important links. Again, Jennifer, we're just incredibly grateful for your expertise, how well you put all of this together, how prepared you were, and I think there's just so much information for us to take, whether we sing or speak all day. It was very informative, and we look forward to hosting you again soon and seeing you at LSM this summer of 2021. So thank
Thank you
you
so
again.
much for having me.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening. Bye.